Hey, it's me, Mark D. Wiz. It's been a while, I know. I'm going to make a health update video soon and also a what about streaming update video soon. And so I'm just trying to kind of get back into making videos. And I had a bunch of thoughts about the gameplay logic and frame rate and physics, and I don't know if you can hear the thunder that just struck here and the lights flickered. So this is a great time to be recording a video. We'll see if we can get through it. I just wanted to talk about I had some thoughts, and I was going to make it like a social media post, but I know it was kind of long, and I figured it'd be better to just talk it out through a video. I want to talk about Godot's gameplay logic, tick rate, and frame rate, and the relationship there, and what I've chosen to do so far. So you may have seen I've been making a little test project to try out Godot stuff, and one of the main things I want to nail down early is figuring out, hey, like how do we do like the gameplay physics and controls and stuff, like what process and tick rate do we want to do for that? Do we want consistent? Do we want flexible? That kind of stuff. And so I've sort of landed on doing, and you could probably see this here if you're watching in like 1080p. I've set the frame rate to 60 FPS, but it's going to do 240. I labeled it PPS as like physics per second. So it's going to do 240 physics ticks in the game, and you can change that value here in the project settings under physics and common. I just set this to 240. Normally I think it's 60, and basically that runs 240 physics simulations per second. So when we say hertz is just a term for a something per second. So 60 hertz is 60 times a second, 240 hertz is 240 times a second, etc. So that means that like the frame rate is only getting like every 4 updates, I think, in this case, if you're running at 60. And that's fine. But you can't really change it, and there's some issues with that, and I'm not used to dealing with that. So Godot's got a few additional challenges that make that a little bit inflexible. And then also in this case, I want to note that all your gameplay logic will be in the physics process function and not the process function, which is, I think, the recommended way to go anyway, so that's fine. So why would I want to scale this? Why would I say I would want 60 physics ticks at 60 FPS and 120 physics ticks at 120 FPS? And honestly, it's a performance thing. You're gonna do 4 ticks at 240 hertz for 60 FPS, and that's potentially 4 extra gameplay updates that you don't need to do. However, I think in this case, it's probably the same. And in the opposite direction, you don't want to completely unlock the gameplay physics tick, because and I did this in Unity, if because in Unity you can manually tick the physics simulation. You can give it its own delta seconds. You can do all that. And in Godot, it doesn't look like you have the source code for Godot, so you can technically do everything that you would want to do with it, but it looks like it would be really complicated to force Godot to do that, and I'm not really interested in editing the engine itself unless it's like a last resort kind of thing. So I'd rather work within the constraints of the engine. And in Unity, they let me just call physics ticks whatever I wanted, which was really helpful because you can know exactly when it's going to run. You can run code just before it, just after it. You can do stuff while it's doing its thing. You have a lot of control there. And that was useful, but I think I don't really need to do that Um, but what I was trying to say is you could, in theory, in Unity, just let physics tick rock for as high as the frame rate goes. You got 2,000 frames per second, it's going to do 2,000 physics ticks, but there's a problem with that. Computers are really bad at math, which might sound like an absurd statement, but it is true. Under certain conditions, you're going to get very bad results. So like now, you know, all the calculations of like the run speed and the jump speed and all that stuff, and this little test sprite rotating, poor Wiley, he's probably very dizzy in there. If you get to a high enough frames per second, let's take that sprite rotation test. Eventually your calculation will end up being no change. It'll just be zero. No angle change between frames, and he will stop spinning. Because when the values get small enough, they just start becoming zero, and they're not going to perform as expected. So when I did this in Unity, I had to think about capping it. And I think at the time I did it like 500 hertz, so it could go up to 500 frames per second, and if it did anything past that, it would just start skipping the gameplay update on frames that were too quick. So if you had 1,000 frames per second, it would be doing every other frame. But the thing is, you don't need to even go that high, and here's why. So, as far as I can tell, based on the research I have seen, the human sort of like frames per second limit of sight is about 250. So that's well below 500. There are other advantages to having, you know, monitors with like 500 hertz or whatever. But those are sort of like outside the realm of this discussion. For the most part, humans can't see past 250 hertz or 250 frames per second. I personally noticed playing like old games that can run very high, and now I have like a 240 hertz LCD monitor, and now the LCDs are not as sharp. You will be able to detect a bit more of a difference on like an OLED or whatever. The LEDs sort of kind of like interframe blend more. I'm not cutting that out. Deal with it. And so it makes it like a little blurry or whatever, and it'll smooth over any kind of frame hitches, or not any kind, but like a lot of them. But even then, at anything past 200 frames per second, I don't think I seem to notice any kind of like frame variation. So if it goes between like 240 and 230, or 230 and 210, if it's fluctuating there, personally, I can't even see the difference. Maybe on an OLED I could see a bit more of a difference, but on the LCD I can't. And, you know, that sort of lines up with that research that I've seen. So I guess to me it's sort of reaffirming, you know, that is probably pretty true in general. And since I play video games, I guess not as much as some people, because I make more games than I do play, but even when making games, you know, you're still being, I guess, exposed to that, and you know, like me, I'm specifically looking for frame hitches. I'm looking for bad frame rates and bad frame pacing and that kind of stuff. So I'm like always trying to look for that. So to me, that's pretty reassuring that if I'm that adamant about trying to find that kind of stuff, that 240 frames per second is probably fine, and you don't need to go any higher than that. So I think that's going to be a good visual sweet spot. Now, you could do interframe interpolation and stuff, but there's one more advantage to actually having your gameplay tick at that high of a rate, and that's the responsiveness of the game. Right now, visually, it's 60 hertz, but the processing of the movement and everything here that you see is at 240 hertz, no matter if it's running at 30 FPS, 120, 60, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's always doing those 240 hertz gameplay ticks. and that makes it incredibly responsive and fluid, and just it's a great gameplay experience. So I think I would say today, in today's world, you should not target anything under 120 hertz gameplay, if it's at all possible. Now we're talking about Godot 2D platforming stuff here. That's an easy performance target to make. You know, if you're making a AAA big blockbuster game, maybe not, or maybe have a performance mode for that kind of stuff, because the gameplay feels really great at 120. Pretty much, I would say that at 90 hertz and higher for gameplay is a really good place to be in that respect. Very responsive and good feeling. And anything beyond that is just kind of gravy. So here's the thing though, if I limit it to 120 FPS, or if I limit the physics to 120 hertz, without doing interpolation, frame blending, and stuff like that, that means that the visuals will not change any faster than 120 hertz. So if you're playing at 240 FPS, you will not notice a visual difference between that and 120 FPS. There is some kind of like a physics interpolation option here, but it seems a little weird, a little goofy to me. So I think that just going straight up to 240 and let you have whatever render frames per second you want, but going beyond 250, again, I don't know if any person is going to ever be able to notice that difference, at least until we get like bionic eyes or something. So I feel like that's kind of like a nice little sweet spot there, and I think I'd be comfortable leaving the game at that as long as it's performant. And in terms of performance, the tests that I've done in terms of performance and monitoring like processing time and stuff like that has been really good so far. And I don't mean just like, yeah, okay, there's one guy here, right? There's a rotating sprite and there's one Mega Man here, but you can sort of make more educated estimates than that. Be like, oh yeah, of course it's running at 60 FPS, or if I turn the FPS limiter off, it's like at like 1800 or something like that. Yeah, that's fine. That's a gaming machine. You know, you sort of expect that kind of performance, and there's not much going on. But if you think about it, say like, okay, here's the physics tick that we currently have, and here's how much the routine is responsible for moving Mega Man around, finding the walls, detecting all sorts of stuff, making them, regulating jump speed and walk speed and all that. Scale that up to like 100. Say, okay, we're gonna have 100 active platforming objects. Estimate how much time that's going to take. And that could give you a pretty good idea of where you're headed. You know, you want to have other factors in play because you have more stuff. You've got like the enemies may or may not be using the same kind of stuff. They may be using pathfinding, they may be using other stuff. With more experience, you can sort of kind of get a feel for how expensive those features are. And for me right now, it's looking like completely in the clear for a game like this, because it's just very simple, it's not very taxing, and I haven't really optimized a lot. Like, everything I've done is in GD script so far, and so, you know, I plan to reprogram a lot of this stuff going forward in C++ to get like a lot more performance out of it. So I think we're doing pretty alright. I think it's okay to keep it at 240 physics ticks per second there. So I guess kind of the other stuff with the performance, like I've left it at the 60 hertz or the 60 hertz rendering with the 240 hertz physics, and I ran that on a Chromebook and it actually kept frame rate, which is pretty astounding if you know anything about Chromebooks. And this is like an old one too. This one's at least 5 years old, and I don't know when it was manufactured. we just happened to end up with it, and I sideloaded Linux on it, which, yes, does increase the efficiency of the Chromebook substantially. Chrome OS is an awful experience, but with that kind of very limited hardware, it was very performant. It did not drain the battery, rapidly. I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to get that. And that, again, with the 240 physics ticks. And sure, not much is going on, but my point is it's a Chromebook. If you had a Chromebook, you know what I mean, how slow those things are. So the engine is performing quite well on potato. I mean, Chromebooks are potatoes of potatoes laptops. It's kind of absurd that it's running at least that good. I don't know if it will continue to when you have, say, 100 megamans on screen. I'm pretty sure it will dip a little bit, but at least for now, I was very surprised by that. And as always, like right now, my target hardware specs are usually around like the Steam Deck, so I test on the Steam Deck quite a lot to see how things go. And obviously the Steam Deck's, kicking ass with this. There's almost nothing going on right now, so there's no problem there. But yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to talk about. I think in general, when you have a single player game, it's a lot more simple. If you have like something like rollback netcode, that's a whole other argument. That's a whole other can of worms that you've got to deal with. But I think for this, I think this is a good plan going forward to continue this Godot test. I'll keep it at 240 hertz and see where it takes me. It looks like it actually might work out all right. And yeah, that's kind of it, I guess. I just kind of wanted to talk about the pros and cons and what I was currently thinking about it. And yeah, so coming up, I'm going to have a video about why am I experimenting with Godot. It's not just a random whim. There are reasons, and I will go through them, and they definitely do have a lot to do with what the upcoming changes in Unreal Engine 6 are. And I'm going to make a video breaking down some of the problems with that and what I might do, and I'm not really sure exactly what to do yet, but probably heard my phone notification, but just ignore that. I'm not redoing the take. You can deal with it. So I'm going to talk about what they're doing, what problems I see with that, and some of the concerns that I have, and I'll hopefully have that video out soon. I'm just trying to get myself back into the video making groove and get things kind of warmed back up, and we'll see where things go. So I guess I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.